Hey friends, just a quick reminder before we get into today's episode, come join us over on our Patreon. That's where we release bonus episodes every other week, and we've already got over 20 episodes from 2023 that you can download and binge right now for as little as $3 a month. We've covered so many good books there, Haunting Adeline, Chateau, Gothicana, and so many more. That's also where we'll cover any books in a series we continue, so Serpent and Dove, High Mountain Court, Serpent and the Wings of Night. You can continue those series with us on Patreon right now. Finally, as a patron, we let you know what we're going to read every month, so you can read along with us if that's your jam. Anyway, that's all from me. On to today's episode.
So yeah, girl, what do you think about this book?
Oh my god. Okay, so we've read some really shitty books, and we've read some really good books. But this book feels like a different sort of breath of fresh air.
Yeah?
Yep, a breath of fresh air. A different sort of breath of fresh air. I was so committed to that, too.
Well, we have our cold open. Amazing.
It's totally the cold open.
Welcome to Your Safe Space, the podcast your partner, friends, parents, whoever thinks is dirty. Don't have time to read books? Want to understand the jokes and the TikToks? We got you, fam. We're the Spice Traders, and we deal in spicy books. I'm Katie, and I need it to make sense.
I'm Liz, and I'm hypercritical. As always, we start every episode with 3 things. The first is a generic trigger warning. You can find specific triggers for this book in our show notes, so please check those out. Also, we do use foul language and talk a lot about sex. If you have sensitivity to any of this, please give this episode a skip.
Secondly, we talk about books. The whole book, nothing but the book, so help me goddess. If you plan to read this book and don't want something spoiled right now, don't listen to this episode.
Lastly, we acknowledge that a good book can hit you at the wrong time. The views expressed in our discussion are our opinion, and we absolutely don't want to diminish the work and the talent of the authors in our community. That said, we have some notes.
Okay, so Liz, what are we talking about today?
Today, we're talking about The Coven by Harper L. This is a pseudonym used by the author Adelaide Forrest. So those are the same person. If you've seen books by one, they're books by the other. We will refer to Harper L. Woods as that is the name she published The Coven under. This was published in 2023, and it is the first in a series with at least one other book, The Coven of Bones. This book is 298 pages long, so that's a midi for us. Now, this cover, when I first looked at it, I thought it was going to be really cheesy of a book. I don't know why. Something about the cover just didn't do it for me at first. I think it's the magic mirror on the wall with these skelly hands on it.
So everything about the cover.
Yeah. Okay, so basically the cover is black. There's some rose petals. There's this circular frame and skelly hands, just skeleton hands up against it. I think it's the skelly hands that upset me because they just look like cheap Halloween decoration to me. They don't look
that's it for me.
Spooky. Yeah.
And I understand why they're there, but they don't look good.
No, I think maybe they're too small in relation to this frame.
Yeah.
They give me the tiny hand vibe. You know, on TikTok, people use the tiny hands.
Yes.
That's what I feel.
I feel the opposite. I feel like they're too big. I feel like the mirror is too small, and I don't know what they're trying to do with the mirror. It's like they're scraggling against it. And I would prefer them to be holding the mirror if it's truly that big of a mirror or that small of a mirror.
That's true. Holding it would be better, but they're really just pressed up against it.
Right.
In this weird catty corner. It's just, and again, I'm not even sure it's a mirror.
It's a mirror. It
gotta
appears
be a
at the end of the book.
Right? Oh, well, I'm not there yet.
Yeah. And I understand why the bones are there, the skeleton hands. We'll find out pretty quickly as we get into the book why. But not my favorite thing.
It's not my favorite thing.
The scale is off.
That's the thing. Because when we get to the purpose of the skelly hands, and I'm just going to call them skelly hands.
Yeah.
I'm here for that in the book. It's creepy.
Yeah.
It's great. It's well described. Just on the cover, it just looks like tiny hands. All right. So, Katie, take it away.
So we're going to be breaking this book into 2 parts. So this is going to be part 1, which is going to cover chapters 1 through 20. So let's get into it. This book is on Kindle Unlimited, and you know how I feel about that. I love that. So if you are a KU girly, this one is effectively free. That's how I think about it. I know that's not true, but
but it feels free. Also, we talked about this in our debrief, but I can forgive a lot of issues when we have good trash. Having it be on KU also makes me far more forgiving.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Because I haven't spent an individual $7.
Exactly.
Okay, so before we get into the book, we get a pretty long trigger warning list, so check those out there in our show notes. But I do want to read kind of like what this author says about this book. She says, quote, "The Coven is a dark paranormal romance with gothic vibes in a dark academia setting. The male lead in the series is pushy, domineering, and manipulative. He goes beyond my typically morally gray antihero and is, in my opinion, an actual villain who gets his happily ever after." And I thought this was interesting. I was like, I want to see you write an actual villain that I root for.
Me too. And I gotta say, I think she's nailing it.
I think she's nailing it too, but also I'm kind of getting like Big Marshmallow vibes a little bit for some of the things that he does.
So I had that thought even at the halfway point, which is where we're going to cover. He doesn't strike me as a villain. Not really. Like, we'll get to it, but they strike a deal where he essentially is like, I'm going to be for the betterment of the Coven. Like, bro, you're not a villain.
Yeah. And like, even so, spoilers, I have finished the book and I'm going to do my best to like cover part 1 without giving too much away, but there are like, that's one of the things, but then like the other one where like she like depletes herself and like he sends her food the next day. Like,
I know.
But anyway, so let's get into it. We start with a prologue, and this prologue is about a dude named Alaric Grayson Thorne, who is our male main character. There we go. And I'm just going to refer to this dude as Gray from here on out.
Listen, I feel like a big fucking idiot because I read this prologue. I read his whole name. I have multiple notes that are like, is Alaric Thorne and Gray the same person? Why does he go by Gray? Where does Gray come from? And now I realize it's his middle name, and I'm just stupid.
But you're so pretty.
Thank you. And then we get to the part where she's like, what's your true name? And he's like, I'm not going to tell you. And I'm like, bitch, is it Gray? Because she's already calling you that. And now I just realized that I'm just all sorts of wrong.
It would have been funny if he was like Alaric Grayson Thorne.
I feel like that would have fit his sass, actually. Wow, I'm dumb. Cool.
Anyway, so Gray is going to see the ruling body of a school named Hollow Grove University, and this dude is the headmaster for that school. Hollow Grove University is a witches' school, and it becomes clear pretty quickly that Gray is also a vampire. So he talks about how the school has fallen into disrepair since it's not been inhabited by students or anybody else in the last 50 years. It also becomes clear that the school is ruled by something supernatural. So it's a dyad, and they are called the Covenant. They are named Susanna Mediza and George Collins, and these were 2 witches who died a long time ago. But rather than staying dead, they were raised again, and their spirits now reside in literally their skeletons.
In their skellies. Hence the skelly hands.
So I understand where the skelly hands come from. I can still not like them.
Exactly.
I thought the representation of the ruling body of the school was very interesting, and I loved the idea of having these like alive skeletons just hanging out.
Because they also like teach classes. Like, they exist. They clock around with their little skelly feet. I thought that was really interesting too. And the way we're introduced to them is they're like in this, it's not a basement, but in this like dark place, and they're like all shawled and very spooky, which is a really great image we get. But then, like I said, they also just exist in the school. Like, they teach classes.
Right. And I just love how the author is so consistent about that because she talks about like the clicking of their bones on the floor as they walk and things like that.
Exactly. Or like them being their skulls, right? But then the narrator will say like I felt like she smiled, but can you smile if you don't have a mouth?
Right.
And that consistency.
Or like she'll talk about feeling the gaze, but they don't have eyeballs. That's just kind of a feeling you get.
Yep. Nope. I liked that a lot.
So the Covenant has summoned the headmaster to talk about reopening the school. So I'm personally still unclear whether they're reopening it to the outside, because this school exists in a magical place called Crystal Hollow, which is basically like it exists in the real world as we would recognize it, but it's like warded from people who aren't magical. Or if they're just reopening it, period, and there hasn't been students. Because when Gray is walking these halls, he's like, man, it's really dusty in here, right? So that implies to me that nobody's been there.
Exactly. And that continued to be a question I had. Like, did you reopen this or just to outside? I think it's just to outsiders, but I really don't know.
Yeah, I feel like, I don't know. The impression that I get is that it's just to outsiders, but it's not clear. It's almost like the author like decided one thing and then like changed horses in the middle of a stream. And so we get like impressions that both things are true. Like it's been dusty, nobody lives there. The Covenant in this conversation says something to the effect of like, oh, witches have been left to learn magic in the comfort of their own homes for 50 years, right? But then later in the book, we'll have our main character, Willow, talk about how like she and these other students from outside of Crystal Hollow are like the only ones that are missing on the context here that all of these other students who have been going to the school get.
Yeah. And this is one of a few instances where we get information that just kind of opens up for more questions.
100%. The other thing that has me questioning this is because the person that leads Gray into this chamber is a witch student herself.
Yes.
So regardless, it doesn't really matter, but it's one of those holes in the story that you could find Atlantis in. It's fine.
It's fine.
I'm going to tell you right now, there's a lot of these, and there's also like some editing issues, I'll say, where just like words were meant to be and they're not.
Yeah.
It doesn't detract from the fact that I enjoyed this book and I read at the top of my lungs to get through it.
Same. Like I have a lot of questions and concerns that will come up, but I had a great time.
Yeah, same. So the Covenant goes on to say that the school, need fresh blood, and Gray asks whether they have concerns about whether they're going to have a repeat of what happened the last time that they opened the school, and he alludes internally to us about a massacre that happened 50 years ago. The last thing we learn is that vampires require the blood of witches to live in this world and that they have some kind of pact with the witches to that effect.
So it's in here where we get a line that really confuses me because they have been made aware of another witch who needs to come to the school. Great. But there's a line that says, that Gray says, then surely she can merely attend next year. If she's 16, she's far too young to begin at Hollows Grove for another 4 years. But it also says that they have to be 20 to attend. So I'm like, so is she 16? And if it's next year, and then if it's 4 years, like, is she 16? Is she 20? What does that mean to me?
I think she's 20 because I think what the Covenant means, which is very convolutedly stated, is that, or I guess Gray says that line.
Yeah.
I think what Gray is saying is that you have to be 20 to enter. So if this person is 16, then they have 4 years to extend the invitation.
Okay. So, that makes sense. But then there's the part that, like, then surely she can merely attend next year. I'm like, but then she would only be 17, so she still can't attend. And it just...
So does she have to be 20 or not?
Right. And that's what confused me. And so the other way that I worked it out in my head was the Covenant says another has made herself known to us. So in my head, she's 20. I'm going with her 20. And we get some brief one-liners about, like, when you come of age. So in my head, you come of age at 16, but that would be like made known to you. However, she's in hiding, which we'll get to. And this was the question that like stuck in my head for a while, for like 3 chapters. And finally my note is like, I don't know why this is fucking with me so much. It just felt really convoluted. Like, if she's 16, she can come next year, and you can't be here till you're 20, so we have 4 years. And I'm like, what?
What?
It just, it really bothered me, and I just had to say it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing too is like, so I had questions about that later when we meet her roommates, because her roommates have been attending the school. Yeah. And so like, I don't actually know how old our protagonist is, Willow. She is at least 20, I think. But I think she might actually be older than that, because all of, like, if we assume that everybody in the school is 20 when they start, her roommates have attended the school before because they help her to class, right? They know what the fuck is happening, and classes started that day. So when did they learn about classes? Probably when they attended before, which again, the school wasn't open. So was it open or not? And so I think they're probably in their like 2nd or 3rd year, because these people have like experience and Willow doesn't. So, but I don't know.
Okay, great. I'm glad that you had that question too, because I was just like, and I know it doesn't fucking matter, but it does matter a little bit, because we've said this in other episodes. I don't want to read about a 16-year-old having sex.
That's the thing. So I just mathed it in my head where, okay, she's homegirl's at least 20.
Yeah.
Great. Sign me up.
I'm here for that. It was just, it's just like really fucked with me, because I read that sentence 6 times and I was like,
what?
I'm sorry, what is happening in this
100%
planet? Like, what? I think you're right that she's older than 20, because she also talks about like the legacies attending class together in the same age or whatever. So she's got to be like 22, 23 also, I guess. It was just a terrible sentence, and it fucked me up for like 4 chapters.
I wish it wasn't there, because you're so right. It is one of those things. It's like, why did you tell me this?
Exactly, because it doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't matter. I mean, look, I'm not here in this particular story for the plot, because we talked about this in our debrief, but it's worth saying here that we've read good books and we've read bad books. It's rare that we read a book that threads that line that you have when you read something like fan fiction or just really trashy smut. This book has a plot. I'm interested in the world, but it reads like trashy smut fanfic.
Yes.
And so, like, I know that the trash is right around the corner, and so I'm reading at the top of my lungs to get there, because I know it's going to be good, because that's what this book is existing for.
Exactly. So I was a little perturbed that immediately I had this wrench thrown into my trash, and I'm like, get the fuck out of here with that.
Yeah, you're trying to apply like guild levels of world crafting onto this story when she's just not there.
I know. It's just what really bothers me. I'm gonna let it go, I promise. But it's in the first fucking chapter, and I'm like, I know. What?
Starting off real good.
But it doesn't
anyway,
matter.
We have to move on.
I know. I've let it go. I won't bring it up again.
We're only a half an hour into this episode.
I'm so sorry. Hi, I'm Liz, and I'm hypercritical.
Look, just living up to the promise, okay?
Listen, I deliver.
You're consistent, for sure. Okay. So 2 months later, we're introduced to our female main character, Willow. And it's worth noting at this point that this book is told from first-person perspective, alternating between Willow and Gray, which I love. Mm-hmm. Willow is at the funeral of her mother with her little brother, Ash. As they look down into their mother's casket, Willow can hear the townspeople behind her whispering about them. It's clear that all of the townspeople were wary of her mother, thinking her a witch, and in that thought, they would be right. Mm-hmm. Willow grabs the necklace around her mother's throat, and she and Ash go to leave. She's like, let's blow this popsicle stand. On the way out, they are accosted by a random dude who says that it's customary to remain so that the townspeople can pay their respects and offer condolences. And Willow tells him, when have I ever cared about your customs? So immediately off the bat, Willow has a backbone.
I really like her as a character.
I do too. She's pithy and she knows who she is. She presents much more like, that's why I think she's actually older than 20, because she presents much more as like at least mid-20s.
Yeah, she does. The way that she carries herself, the way that she responds to the world, very much.
We also don't know how long the school takes, point of order, so...
That's the thing that's kind of weird, because they're essentially going to college, so like, do you graduate when you're like 35? Like,
look.
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
It's fine. So they move on and they leave, and as they do so, we get a little bit of information about the magic in this world. One of the characteristics of magic in this world is that if it's not used, it will burn up the person within whom it resides, and that is apparently part of what happened to Willow's mother. She was in hiding, and now that she is dead, the wards that she put in place to hide her, Willow, and her brother Ash will come down. We also learned that it is customary, particularly for witches like Willow and her mother, green witches, to be buried in the dirt without any casket or anything so that their body can be taken back into their element. To that end, her mother's ex-partner, ex-husband? Anyway, it's Willow's father, will dig up her mother's casket and make sure that she's brought out of it and buried on top of the casket so that she can go back to the earth, essentially. The last bit of information we get is that Willow has very strange eyes. She has one that is amber colored and one that is violet colored.
My note was, why do they always have to have purple eyes?
Dude, the purple eyes is starting to become a trope in and of itself. Purple eyes or purple hair, just like, come on.
Like, there are other colors. Is it because it's the one color that, like, isn't in eyes? I don't fucking know.
Cerulean.
Cerulean.
Okay, but beyond the colors of the eyes, I did... Okay. Wait, I'm going to reverse really quick. How were the eyes not a dead giveaway to literally every witch she's ever met?
I don't know. That is a really good question. That is
just had to ask.
That's a great... No one looks at her that closely, Katie.
I guess not. Jeez.
I don't know.
It's like a husky. Like, wouldn't you, like, see it from across the room?
Immediately notice that? Nope. All right.
Anyway, I really like the magic in this world. I think it's really well done for a book that reads like a trashy smut novel. Like,
indeed.
It's really cool. What did you think about it?
I thought it was really well done. We'll get more into how the magic works and looks, but it was really well described and developed. I'm excited to learn more in subsequent books, the other sects of witches and like how those come into play. But the way her magic is described, it's really beautiful and eerie, and like the author does a really good job.
Yeah, and I thought it was really unique. I don't think we've read anything that has this take on magic.
No, it was really unique. And that's where this book treads this weird line of trashy fanfic smut, but also some like pretty good world building sometimes. It's a very interesting take on all of it. But I did find the magic system, it made sense, because that is an easy thing to mess up. And I was 100%. Impressed.
Yeah, and I think that's why I can forgive some of these other things, like how long is the school? How old are these people? Like, I can forgive those because the big things in this book, the author got right.
Exactly, which is very impressive.
So when they get back home, Willow tells Ash to pack his things and get ready to meet his father at the bus station. Willow has Ash convinced that she will go with him to live with Ash's father and his new family. It's clear in this conversation that Willow is very much aware of what she is and of what their mother was, but Ash has been kept in the dark. Though he is a witch, he will not come into his powers for a while. So this is what we were talking about earlier with the coming of age. And we're given to understand that this is around 16-ish. Willow knows that she must leave her brother alone. They must split up so that she can continue to protect Ash from the Covenant, since that's what their mother was hiding from all these years. And so that she can move on and fulfill this plan that she's been alluding to in her head. Next, we get a yield perspective shift to Gray, and he is again before the Covenant and the Tribunal. So the Covenant are those eerie skeletons. They are a part of the Tribunal, which is the ruling body of the school. And the Tribunal is made up of 12 witches, plus the 2 skeleton people. And the the 12 ruling witches are essentially one from each colored house of witch. We'll get into that a little bit more. Anyway, the Covenant tell Gray that they have selected 2 new students from each of the houses from outside of Crystal Hollow, but there is one more that they need him to collect personally. So far, they've collected 2 new whites, purples, grays, blues, reds, and yellows from outside the magical barrier surrounding Crystal Hollow. And again, Crystal Hollow is the town in which the school is set. So let's talk about the witches. So whites, purples, grays, blues, reds, and yellows. We don't really get a whole lot of description about what each of these do. And I'm realizing now that there's a little bit of a discrepancy here because we talk about brown witches later and they're not included in this. But
oh, okay. You're right.
Anyway, so white witches, magic crystals, purples, magic cosmos, blues were given to understand are water, yellow is fire, red is lust, and I think grays, which is supposed to be browns, are kind of like green witches, which is nature.
Yeah, that really confused me.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, And then whites. What were whites?
Crystals. Crystals and rocks and stuff.
But not earth, because that's brown/green /gray.
Yeah. Well, so what I was going to say is I feel like greens can like commune with like the living plants and things, and maybe browns is just like literally the dirt, but then she also uses dirt, so I don't know.
There's no way to know. It doesn't
There's no
matter.
way to know. Anyway, Gray is given a file, and when he opens it, he sees Willow staring back out at him and is surprised that she exists at all. She shares the last name Mediza, the same as Susanna, and it is clear that she is Susanna's great, however many great granddaughter, and continues a line of green witches that were thought to be extinct. Just as Willow and her mother were prepared after her mother's death, Willow's existence became known because her mother's wards failed. It's clear in this conversation that the Covenant wants Willow to attend the school, and this desire is not optional for Willow.
Nope.
And this shocks Gray because he says everything is based on consent in the school. Quote, from breeding to feeding, they consented every step of the way. Even if they had to twist circumstances to gain that consent, they did what they had to do to ease their guilty conscience with lies. And I thought that this was a little odd because, as we will see later, there is not a lot of consent happening in some of the things that unfold in this book.
No, there's hardly any consent ever anywhere.
No. So again, that's just a weird thing for you to say to me and then like consistently illustrate otherwise.
And immediately illustrate otherwise. Even in this conversation, it's contradictory because he's like, oh no, it's all consent based, but I'm going to force her to come. Also, why does he have to go personally? It doesn't matter.
Well, so I think because Willow is Susanna's great granddaughter, she doesn't want like any room for error.
That's okay. That makes sense.
Like, of all of the things in this situation, that was the thing that I had the least amount of questions about.
No, you're right. I also didn't have very many questions. I was just wondering.
Yeah.
I had questions about why he was headmaster. It doesn't matter.
I also have questions about why he's headmaster.
It doesn't make any fucking sense. Like, why?
Also, I don't have a whole lot of experience with headmasters, but I assume that you do because you work at a college. He doesn't strike me as doing very headmastery things.
No. Also, not at all. Because also, later we will go to his office, but it's his apartment. And I'm like, if you're a headmaster, you have to have like a different office. It cannot just be your home. What?
Yeah. Yeah.
And like, it's large and nice, but...
And in the school, but also...
But like, that it has to be different quarters. I'm sorry. This is your home office that you see students in.
Look, he's working from home.
Well.
Anyway. So back to Willow, and she receives a call from her Faja. And her father is seemingly furious that she and her brother Ash attended their mother's funeral at all, and that Willow hasn't, quote, disposed of her brother yet.
The fuck,
Willow
bro?
says, quote, "You're demanding I give up my entire future for your revenge. The least you can do is understand I would want to attend my mother's funeral."
Which, again, I love her clapback, but her father is the worst.
Yeah, he is the definition of a narcissist who's not hiding anymore.
Exactly. But it's also so weird because he supposedly is going to go and do the work of like digging up her mother so that she can return to the earth. It doesn't seem like he would give a shit.
Yeah, I feel like I got the impression that her mother probably like tricked him into like a bargain or something.
Yeah.
Because if the vampire vessels and the witches can have some kind of pact that they all like abide by, there's got to be some kind of like magical agreement system happening here.
That's true. That makes sense.
Because you're right. I mean, if he was just left to his own devices, he wouldn't give a flying fuck.
No, because it doesn't seem like he gives a flying fuck at all except for his own revenge.
Yeah. It very much is clear as we get through this book that her father procreated in order to serve his own purposes.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, so this is when we find out that Willow's father really wants Willow to do something in revenge of his sister and her aunt. And so this person's name is Lorelei, and so I'm going to refer to her as Lorelei because it's just going to be confusing for me to say her aunt, his sister every single time.
Yeah.
Anyway, Lorelei had given everything to protect the knowledge of Willow's father's existence from the Covenant. She did this because the Covenant and the school make male witches choose between their magic and the ability to have children. And now Willow's father has brought Willow up to find what I thought was Lorelei's bones.
Until our debrief, I thought it was still Lorelei's bones.
Yeah, so I'm going to say this is another one of those things that's very confusing. I'm just going to clarify right now. She's not looking for Lorelei's bones. She's looking for Charlotte Hecate's bones. And so it's giving nothing to like tell you that Lorelei Hecate is the direct descendant of Charlotte Hecate, who was the first witch. And so she spawned all of the other witches, but her direct line are necromancers. So Lorelei was a necromancer and Willow is part necromancer too. But necromancers need the bones of Charlotte Hecate to be able to channel their power. That is what Willow has been tasked to find, because at some point during the massacre 50 years ago, the bones were stolen and lost.
Whoops.
And Lorelei was killed.
Oops. Yeah, I just
Questions.
I can't think about it too hard because I don't understand it.
Yep. I'm trying not to think about it too hard either. Okay. One of the reasons Willow's father is pushing her so hard is because he can't do anything about it himself because he doesn't have any magical aptitude. Their conversation is interrupted, though, because Willow's front doorbell rings and her father hangs up on her. As Willow goes to the front door, she tells Ash to stay hidden, and he does so. This is something that he's been trained to do his entire life so that nobody figures out that he's a male witch. And at the door, she finds, you guessed it, Gray. Willow immediately knows what Gray is. Vampires are called vessels in this world because they are literally demons trapped within a human-looking shell for all of eternity.
Which I did like that explanation of vampire and like the use that they have in this book. I still have questions, but I did like it.
I did too, yeah. And there is a reason that this is a thing, right? And I do like how the author was just like, how do I marry these two concepts and make it make sense? It makes sense. And the backstory here is that vessels didn't used to have one like human shell. They would inhabit the bodies of others, but they would burn that body up within a year. And so ostensibly this was inconvenient, right? For all of the demons walking the earth. And so the demons made a deal with Charlotte Hecate to make these everlasting bodies. But they've come to realize now that rather than being a convenience, it's a prison, right? They don't have to continually seek new vessels, but they also can't.
They can't leave their
right
cage, their flesh prison.
Their flesh prison, yeah. So they are forced to walk the earth until a necromancer unmakes them, which there hasn't been another necromancer in 50 years.
So, whoops.
So Willow decides to play dumb. He asks whether Miss Mediza is in and tells her that there is an offer from a prestigious university for her to study at. Willow says she's not interested. He pushes, but she says that he can leave the invitation in her mailbox and she'll look at it later. He says that he is the invitation, and she says then she's definitely not interested. She tries to close the door on him, but he sticks his foot like in the jam so she cannot. And as this happens, he gets a better look inside. And unfortunately, Ash has made the decision to try to come and assist his sister. He's got like a knife in his hand and he's 6.
I love that he's just like, I'm here to fight.
Right. And Gray gets a glimpse of him. Before Gray can use his compulsion on the boy, Willow tells Ash to get back in the kitchen. Willow herself is protected against compulsion because of the necklace that she took from her mother. Gray immediately understands that Ash is Willow's sibling and probably a witch, and says that if she comes quietly with him, he won't tell anybody about Ash.
Well,
Willow declines that offer and physically attacks Gray so that he gets the fuck out of her door and she can shut it against him. The trope of vampires not being allowed into some place without being invited is alive and well in this story.
I love it because he like shoves his foot like in the door, which I guess is as close as he can get. And she just goes on the assault, which takes him by surprise. And also, I think, begins endearing her to him.
100%, because she doesn't literally pull any punches. She like does the miscongeniality like solar plexus, gonads, nostrils, whatever. Like
yes, and it's
really funny.
It's so funny.
So outside, Gray is frustrated and a begrudging, burgeoning respect for Willow has blossomed. So he calls one of his backup people, Juliet, and says that she and this other guy, Kairos, need to come and help him because he underestimated this witch.
Whoops.
Inside, Willow and Ash go into the basement where there is a secret passageway out of the house that Willow and her mother made for just such an occasion. Ash at first refuses to go, demanding that Willow tell him what's going on, and she eventually has to. She tells him just enough so he will comply and go with her. So Willow says that their mother was a green witch, and so is Ash, but he won't be able to be a witch until he's older. She then gives him a journal from Willow's aunt, Lorelei, the same one that she's been using to try to find the bones, and says that it will explain most of what Ash needs to know when the time comes.
Also, this kid's like 6.
Yeah, he's real young. So the tunnel out of the house emerges some distance away in the woods, and Willow's plan is to have them run toward the bus station where they can meet up with Ash's father and hopefully escape. She, of course, will cause the distraction so that Ash can get away safely. And boy, does she cause a distraction. Mm-hmm. She uses her green magic to not only distract, but also kick the asses of the vessels. And the way that she uses her magic is pretty cool. It's couched as a relationship with the natural world around her. So she asks and the natural world responds, but for a cost. And that cost is literally her blood. So she can make trees bend and grow at will. She can make the earth rise up to meet her, and dirt can even heal her wounds.
We kind of mentioned it before, but I really love the way this magic is laid out, because even though the cost is her blood, it's not in like a dark, creepy way. It's in this really beautiful, like symbiotic relationship way, which we'll see more of later. I mean, it's kind of creepy, but it's so interesting. And she also talks about how she can feel like the pain and the emotions of the plants. Like at some point she has to like cut a branch off a tree, and she like talks about how like the tree feels that pain and also like how they respond to her. And I just really liked the way all of it was written.
I did too. It was really beautiful. And so to your point, it's very much couched as like a nourishment, right, of the plants, not like a predatory or like even painful experience. Like, yeah, it hurts Willow to make a cut on herself, but she's happy to give back to nature because it gives so much to her.
Exactly. And I just really loved that. I will say that she uses dirt quite a few times to heal herself, and every time my brain goes, rub some dirt in it.
Every time my brain was like, keep a little dirt under your pillow for the dirt man.
Yes. That's even better.
Anyway. So Willow and Gray end up getting into a duel of sorts. He tells his other 2 lackeys to go after the boy, and they are pretty evenly matched. He doesn't have any magic, but he's a lot stronger, so he's got superhuman strength and speed and all of that. And as they fight, Gray remarks that Willow is just like her mother, who had also been a stubborn witch before she faked her own death to escape the Covenant. Gray had expected Willow to know nothing about her magic and be totally untrained, but is impressed at the control and the power that she wields. At some point, Gray does pin Willow to the ground, and he immediately bites her and feeds from her. He makes it painful, even though she remarks internally that he could make it feel like ecstasy. Their duel is interrupted, though, when the other 2 get to Ash and Willow hears Ash screaming. By the time she gets to him at the bus station, the other 2 vessels there are holding Ash, and Gray joins them. So they're using Ash as a bartering chip to make Willow stop fighting, essentially.
Well,
Willow begs Gray to let Ash go, and he doesn't understand the feeling of love. He sees it as a weakness, but Willow says that she feels sorry for them, that they'll never know such a powerful feeling. Ultimately, Gray lets Ash go and tells him to go to his father, who is waiting by the buses. Ash at first doesn't want to leave Willow, but eventually Gray uses his compulsion and tells Ash to go to his father and never look for his sister. Willow doesn't understand why Gray did this, but he says that one day she's going to owe him a favor in exchange for this.
Well, I was okay with that. Does Ash's father know that he is a witch?
Unclear.
I'm interested to see what happens with Ash, especially as we learn more about male witches.
Yeah, same. And I have to assume that he knows something is happening, right? Because, like, he has eyes. He saw this happen with Ash.
Right? Just like a whole bunch of adults swarming him in a parking lot.
Uh-huh. I'm literally holding him a captive. Like, I have to assume that he knows something.
He's got to know something. It's just, I'm so interested in it. We do also learn in here how vessels don't understand feelings of love because they literally don't have hearts in their bodies.
Yep. Because they're demons.
But we learn later that they do have hearts. They're just kept in hell.
With their actual bodies.
And I liked that, though. I was like, oh, so you do have a heart.
Oh.
Oh, what a twist.
Tell me more about the heart that you don't have.
I just liked that.
Yeah, I did too. So Willow is packed into the vessel's car so they can take her to the school. As they drive away, Gray asks whether she's going to be a problem for him since he's the headmaster and needs to maintain order at the school. In response, Willow tells him, quote, "If it's order that you value, then I will give you nothing but chaos."
I just love Willow so much, and I love their banter. Like, even just small things. Like, after he bites her and feeds from her in the forest, she heals the wound, and it's just like, that was rude.
Yes, exactly.
And he's like, well, you're rude.
Yeah, I do have to say that one of the things about this book that I love, and I think one of the first tip-offs that I had that the trash was soon to come, was the fact that their banter was immediately at 100.
Which I love books that create good banter between romantic parties. It's just one of my favorite things to read.
Same. And it's hard to do. Like, we've read so many books where the conversation is just stilted and, like, not interesting.
Exactly. But they immediately have chemistry, and it doesn't feel forced. Like, they feel like real characters that have complicated feelings.
Tension.
You could cut it with a knife.
So as they drive, it becomes clear that they are in New England and heading to the town of Salem in Massachusetts. It's October and the weather is gloomy, and I just love that whole thing.
I do too.
So Willow and Gray are sitting in the backseat of the car, and Juliet and Kaus are in the front. Willow and Gray start flirting about how much they both despise the Coven and who despises them more. And at some point, Juliet pipes up and says, "Will you two please just fuck and get it over with? You'll feel better."
Everyone will feel much better.
Willow is horrified, even though she admits internally that her mission to find the bones will likely depend on her seducing this guy at some point. So instead of flirting directly with Gray, she starts flirting with Kairos in the front seat. and gets a rise out of Gray like almost immediately. He's like 0 to territorial in like 2 pages.
Which I adore. And poor Karos is just like frozen. We don't really see a lot of him, but it's described like she reaches forward and like runs her hands like up his arms and his chest and his neck, and he's just like a statue.
Yeah, he's like, please don't bring me into this.
I know, right? Please leave me out of this. Thank you.
Yeah. Poor Karos.
I know.
As they near the school, they drive up and up into the hills, and a fog rolls into the forest around them. In the distances, Willow can just make out the shapes of creatures running through the trees, and though she asks what they are, we don't get a straight answer. Gray only says that there are beasts far scarier than witches roaming the forests around the school. We do get an answer to this in part 2.
Stay by.
When they arrive at the school is described as being a gothic mansion on the outcropping of a cliff. So literally gothic horror.
Which we love. I love.
Yes. In the middle of October in New England? Yes, honey.
Yes. Yes, please.
Near the entrance to the school, there is a memorial to the victims of the massacre from 50 years ago, and Willow easily spots her aunt's name, Lorelei Hecate. She, as far as anyone in the school is aware, was the last Hecate necromancer in the line. So Willow, nobody knows that Willow is related to Hecate at all.
Nope. So the last Black Witch.
Willow is taken immediately to the Covenant. A young man, Iben, meets her with the intention of escorting her, but Gray gets territorial immediately and escorts Willow himself. On the way, they pass a courtyard that was clearly once a flourishing garden, but is barren and dried up now. Willow wonders internally why the brown/gray witches weren't able to keep it alive. They, like green witches, commune with the earth for their magic.
I don't understand.
Yeah. I mean, I understand why they need... I understand why the author needed another witch to, like, be able to do similar things so that Willow would know something is wrong, but still. But
at least pick one color.
Right.
Like,
one color and stick
brown
to it.
or gray.
So, as Willow walks into the tribunal chamber, the magic that protects it takes a drop of her blood as some kind of test, but we don't hear anything more about this, and it doesn't reveal to anyone in the moment that she's a necromancer, so, like, okay.
Right, I don't know. She gets away with it for a while.
Yeah. So the tribunal has a ring of 12 chairs, so 2 representatives for each witch house, and then the 2 chairs for the Covenant are kind of like on a raised platform behind it. Willow is immediately at 100 with the Covenant, determined to be the most difficult possible. Susanna says that Willow looks nothing like her mother, and Willow claps back, "Neither do you."
I
Amazing.
love it so much.
So the brown witch Bray tries to make Willow bow, but Willow uses her magic to make the vines of his chair come alive and strap him to his own seat.
Fuck yeah.
And everyone is impressed and surprised by her ability to do so.
They really underestimated her.
They did. And I love how she not only claps back, but she has the power to do so, because I feel like we've read books before that have like a sassy main character, right? But like she doesn't know how to wield a sword, or like her magic, blah, blah. And so she can't actually back up her sassiness.
Exactly.
Which is annoying.
But she can back it up. And I love that it shocks all of them.
Yeah, I know. They're just like, oh, okay, that's unexpected. And the Covenant says something to that effect. And Willow says, quote, "Just because my mother hated all of you doesn't mean she hated what she was."
Which I love too. Like, she continues to kind of bring that up. Like, I disagree with what you're doing here. That doesn't mean I don't want to be who I am.
Yeah, and I thought it was very topical and well done as a theme to say, like, you can disagree with the establishment, essentially.
Yeah.
And still have pride in who you are and what you can do, right?
Exactly, because I do feel like so often we'll get similar types of characters where it's just like a complete, I'm going to reject everything. And she's like, no, I'm going to use what I know. I'm proud of what I know. I'm going to use it to help like the planet, essentially. I just don't like how you're doing it.
Yeah, she's like, I'm not going to let your evil or whatever it is that I disagree with dull my shine. So the Coven tells her that it's a shame to be alone in the world as a witch, but Willow disagrees. She sees the controlling, manipulative prison that the school actually is, and that the Coven represents, and understands why her mother wanted nothing to do with it or its breeding program.
Ugh, the breeding program.
For real. Willow is dismissed, and Ivan shows her to her rooms. On the way, they pass the courtyard again, the dead one, and Willow decides to do something about it. Ivan tells her that no one knows why the magic isn't as potent at the school anymore, and Willow takes that as a sign that something is wrong.
Very wrong.
Very, very wrong. She approaches a rose vine and offers her blood to it. The plant is tentative, almost like it's afraid of retribution, and that breaks Willow's heart. But eventually it does crawl up both of her arms and take from her. Ivan has never seen anything like that before, because such offerings are forbidden at the school, and Willow questions how they can even practice magic at all if they don't give anything back to their elements. All they do is take from the world around them.
That's not how it should work.
No. After the plant releases Willow, it grows afresh, but Willow is left weakened and lightheaded as if she were drunk. She uses the soil to heal the cuts on her arms, but it doesn't replace the blood she's lost, and she's unsteady on her feet.
Or the magic she's lost.
Right. Ivan is in awe of what Willow did and admires it. He admits that he's given up his magic in the hopes of finding his true love and having a family. Willow is horrified that he's already made that choice, that he's already been forced to make that choice. Something I should note about this is that it comes up a lot as one of the key points that Willow disagrees with about the Coven. So the fact that the Coven doesn't practice the old ways, which is this offering that we've just seen, but also that they treat male witches like this. But we don't get a good reason why male witches are forced to make this choice.
No, and why it's only male witches that have to make this choice.
Right. It's very strange.
It is. It's really strange.
As Ivan helps Willow back to her feet, Gray comes upon them and sweeps Willow into his arms, carrying her up to her room. Willow can't help but notice how good it feels to be held by him, and she berates herself internally for finding the prospect of seducing him for more information not quite as odious as she had once thought. Gray shows her room and tells her classes start the next day and that one of her roommates can help her navigate her classes. As he leaves, she calls him Gray for the first time. Hitherto, she'd been calling him Headmaster.
And no one else calls him Gray. It was something that someone in the tribunal called him. Mm-hmm. So she's like, yep, your name is not Alaric. It's Gray.
Yeah. So we next see Gray that night wandering the halls of the school, a bit starstruck and on the back foot from meeting Willow. His feet lead him back to her room, where he finds her passed out on top of the sheets, still in her jeans. He decides to help her into her pajamas, but as soon as he has her pants off, he pops a boner and leaves in embarrassment.
Immediately pops a boner.
Yeah, and his internal monologue is like, so I definitely want to fuck her, but I definitely want her to be, like, awake for it.
Which I appreciated.
Yeah, I appreciate it too. I mean, this whole thing is creepy, but like he's a vampire, a demon trapped in a vampire's body, so I'm going to give him a lot of like leeway here. Oh, yeah. But also, I do appreciate that as soon as like he realized that it was inappropriate and his body was reacting, he was like, nope, I'm noping out of here really fucking quick.
And like he never like touches her, like he doesn't do anything. He like kind of touches her stomach, but like that's it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Which is also where he's not really a villain. He's
right, exactly.
A gooey teddy bear.
A marshmallow.
Yeah,
like
okay. A villain, I feel like would have leaned into that and been way creepier. Or like gone through her shit or something.
Right. Or like as soon as he realized that he wanted to fuck her, like do that.
Yeah, or at least like feed from her in her sleep or something.
Yeah. Yeah, every time he does something, she's awake. And even if she might be saying the no thing, we get the internal monologue that she does want it, or it's like in response to him telling her, you know, tell me to stop or whatever.
Exactly. Which is the only time it works, because in real life, if you hear no, you stop. You don't know their internal monologue. But I'm not opposed to it in books when we do know that you want them.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I forget where I saw it, but somebody was talking about that dynamic, about how we read such unhealthy dynamics in these books, but would never accept that or put ourselves into those circumstances in real life. And somebody couched it as safe insecurity.
Ooh.
Which I love.
I love that.
Like, because in books, you can be assured that, like, no one's actually going to get hurt. Or at least in the books we read.
Yeah.
But in real life, you can't.
No, exactly. And they're not real people. So, like,
right.
I'm okay with
exactly.
that.
So before class the next day, Willow meets her roommates. We have Nova, Margot, and Della. They're all from the original Witch House bloodlines. And they call children like this, not children, I guess, like descendants of these witch bloodlines, legacies. So Willow is technically a legacy, even though she grew up outside of Crystal Hollow. So Willow is one of 12 other students from outside Crystal Hollow who will be attending, but she won't actually like attend class with any of them because she is a legacy. She'll attend classes with all of these legacies. And again, this is one of those things where it's like, so her roommates know what's up. They've attended this school before. They're not 60, so what's happening?
And we just don't know. We just don't know.
Yeah.
It's fine.
It's fine. As they leave the room, Gray has had Iben deliver a huge breakfast for Willow, knowing that she probably depleted herself. Not probably. Knowing that she depleted herself almost entirely during the offering the night before. Again, marshmallow.
Yeah, right.
And one could argue, like, Gray wants to make sure that she's got enough blood so that he can feed from her, but, like, there are other ways to do that.
Right, and essentially it's going to replenish anyway. Like, you don't have to feed her. But it comes at a perfect time, too, because she's saying, like, her roommates give her a granola bar, and she says something like, I need food from the earth, blah, blah, blah. And suddenly this delicious breakfast shows up. Like, he didn't have to do that.
Yeah. And it's like an egg McMuffin and like fruits and vegetables. Yeah. And she's just like, this is fucking delicious.
Right. I can only, and we get the comment of like, my roommates didn't comment on if they thought it was weird, but their faces sure did.
I know, right? I love that too. I also loved that we have a protagonist who she's described as being curvy and she has like auburn hair. I forget where we get that description, but we do get that description and I'm fine with it. But the other thing about this scene in particular is that she's not thin, but she's totally like, she doesn't have an unhealthy relationship with food. She's like, I need this. It's replenishing my body. Like, it's delicious. I'm going to fucking eat it. Like,
yeah.
I think that was such a healthy portrayal. Again, going into like the theming of this book, like all about balance. Like, she depleted herself. She needs to rebalance the scales. Like, it's just, I loved that illustration.
Yes, it was really well done. There are so many things in this book that are really well done and other things that are just trash, and I'm here for all of it.
Yep, exactly. So they walk to class together, despite Iben not actually attending with them. And it's here that Willow suspects that Iben hopes his future mate is her. Mm-hmm. Before they head into class, Iben stops Willow alone and tells her that she's playing with fire. He sees that she flirts with Gray and says maybe one day she'll realize that vessels like Gray are not an option for her. He ends this interaction by saying, quote, enjoy your game, Willow, but just know I play to win. And this is where I texted you and I was like, okay, girl, Iben, you got some game.
I know. My note was like, Iben is yummy. Like, okay.
I almost had the thought of like, is this a reverse harem?
I would be so okay with a why choose right here.
Right? I would be too. But based on what we find out about Gray later, I don't think that's the case. But we'll see.
No. And Iben kind of gets a little snaky later.
He does get a little sneaky, but to be fair, he's only sneaky because of something that the Covenant says.
That's true. That's true. Because I like Iben.
Yeah, I like Iben too.
And I'm glad what I really appreciated because we've gotten this monologue where Willow is like fucking with Iben's head and very much playing this game with him just to kind of get under Gray's skin. Mm-hmm. I like that we don't get this mopey character in Iben that's like, oh, she doesn't want me. I like that he's like, I know you're playing with me. I'm going to play back and I'm going to
But I'm kind of here for it. Yeah, exactly.
I know. So like I was like, okay, I like this dynamic.
Yeah, I do too. So of course Gray is teaching her first class. What is the class? History. How often does he teach it? Who cares? What other classes does she have? Who knows? Those details are not in this book. And pish posh on you for asking.
That's amazing.
So they have class. And Gray says some pretty inappropriate things in this class, but I have to remind myself that they're all basically adults.
Yeah, he basically walks up to her and is like, I'm gonna fuck you.
Or if you need to be fucked, Ivan can do that for you. And she's just like, okay. I mean, she recovers well or whatever, but I was just like, what are we talking about?
I don't know. And like the other students in the class who can, because it's even said like the people directly next to me can hear what he's saying.
Right. Okay. So one of the people directly next to her, and she's not a part of the plot yet, but I just thought it was interesting, is Margot. And she's a red witch who doesn't like to be touched. And one of the first things that Willow says to her is, wow, that must suck given where your magic comes from. And she's like, yeah, it does. And they like have this immediate connection.
I really liked that. I also want to know more about Margot.
I do too. Anyway, after class, Willow stays behind and asks why Gray teaches history to witches, as he seems like a pretty biased point of view. During their discussion, Gray reveals internally that he knows about the bones of Charlotte Hecate, which, spoilers, is actually what Willow is looking for. And it's here that I realized that it's not the bones of Lorelai, it's Hecate.
In case you were confused.
Sorry, Charlotte.
So were we.
Yeah. Anyway, they talk about how Charlotte Hecate died, or rather didn't. She was just dismembered and then her pieces scattered so her body couldn't regenerate itself or release her spirit even in death.
Rude.
The conversation and what they talk about really doesn't matter. The point is just a ploy to get them close enough and in a compromised position where Willow is proving a point and kisses Gray ever so lightly to get a rise out of him. And then when he reacts, she tells him that she knows that he was in her room last night and is basically like, the next time you're in my room, like, have some balls to do something about it or don't ignore me the next day.
Yes! Don't act like nothing happened.
And he tries to deny it, and she's like, look, I smelled you in the room, and then the roses told me, which is surprising to Gray, and I love that the plants, like, are her narcs.
I just, the way that the magic works and her relationship with the plants is just so good.
I know. It's so good.
And this was such a fun reveal to me, because when we had Gray's perspective, he has some internal monologue, like, okay, she clearly doesn't know. She was asleep the whole time, like, she's acting normal. And they have this banter, and she's like,
gotcha.
I knew. Yeah, and even when she says it, he's like, you were asleep. And she's like, yeah.
Yeah, I was.
But.
But there are other ways. Anyway, speaking of narcs, Ivan has gone to fetch Susanna. And it's kind of implied that Ivan, like, was spying on them, saw this, and then went to go get, like, mommy to, like discipline them or break it up.
Like, was he just, like, outside the classroom door the whole fucking time?
Waiting for Willow?
Well,
yeah. Anyway, Susanna's like, Gray, keep it in your pants. And Gray's like, well, Willow is a willing partner, but Willow says that that's a lie. So Gray has to let her go.
Whoops.
Willow leaves and Susanna tells Gray that he's better off staying away from Willow. Gray says he will do as he pleases within the rules and he intends to invoke Dominium. All we know right now is that Dominium is not something that's been claimed in centuries, and it's some kind of ownership that a vessel can have over a witch. He tells Susanna to not tell Willow, as he will do so when he's ready.
I want to know more about this.
Yes. So back to Willow, who somehow hasn't seen Gray in days, despite him being her history teacher.
Don't ask questions.
Fine.
Fine.
And she's kind of in her feelings because she's like, okay, he clearly was into me, but like, where you at? This is making my plan very difficult. Anyway, she's in the library studying with Ivan, and Gray comes and fetches her, saying he wants a word. Willow is off kilter again because she hasn't seen him for a while and isn't sure what this conversation is about. They end up going to his office, which is in the school, but to your point earlier, is also where he sleeps.
Right, like she can see the open door to his bedroom. Like, it's his apartment.
Yeah, it's basically an apartment. Like, whatever, it's fine. It serves a purpose.
It's fine. The bed is clearly there for a reason.
Yes, we will use it eventually.
Woohoo!
So Willow asks what Gray's true name is, but he declines to tell her, saying that true names have power. So the inference here is that his demon has a name that is not Gray, right? And so then he offers up a truce between them. So they've been kind of like push-pulling each other the entire time they've met. And he's like, look, we can work better together. So let's not be so at odds and work toward a common goal. He's like, I want to see the Coven come back to the old ways. You also want that. Let's work together to do that. And in exchange, he will protect Willow from the Covenant's intention to wed and breed her as soon as possible.
Excellent.
Yeah. The wed and bred part is really what seals the deal for Willow, because Gray tells her, like, look, she's kind of shocked to hear that this has already been a topic of discussion. And he's like, I'm pretty sure they were talking about it the moment they knew you existed.
Yeah, from the get-go.
Yeah. So she agrees and they exchange blood to seal the deal. It's a steamy moment, but it's only, I think she takes blood from his thumb.
So it's a really steamy moment because he like bites his thumb and like holds it out to her. But because he bit his thumb, he has like his own blood on his lip. And so she like sucks it off of his lip and then off of his thumb.
Oh yeah. Okay. I remember that now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ugh. It's so good.
It's so good.
It's really making the vampire kink in me like happy.
Because we get the blood sharing. Because then in turn, to seal the deal, he has to take some of her blood. And instead of like biting her thumb, as would be custom, he bites her lip.
Yep.
Which
is great.
Anyway. So great. On that note.
Moving on. So next we see Willow in class taught by Susanna, the skeleton. And Susanna asks the class where magic comes from. No one in class knows what to say beyond, quote, the source. But Willow knows, so she's Hermione in this situation, right? So she's like, actually, the source is the world around us, everything in nature. Susanna essentially says she's right, even though she's insufferable, and goes on to say that specifically the red and the black witches were made to balance each other out. That Charlotte Hecate was too powerful for her own good, and the Coven wanted to put a leash on that. That's what's implied. She doesn't outright say that specifically, but I have to infer that because I don't know who else would, like, do that.
That was what I understood that to be.
Again, questions. I have so many questions.
So many questions.
So this splitting or, like, I want to say democratizing of powers was pretty easy to do, since the black line in particular, so necromancy through the Hecate line, only passes to one witch at a time. So Lorelai had it. Willow's father was anticipating having it as being her last known relative, and when he didn't, that's when he realized that he needed to procreate so that it could pass to Willow. So we also learned that Charlotte Hecate made the vessels, and they can only be unmade by a necromancer. But Susanna poses the question to the class, how do you keep vessels in line when they do not die? How do you convince them not to just take what they need from witches? And the ultimate answer, which Willow gives, is that you can't.
Yes. And she does go on to add that the only way to do it would be to have them in some form of servitude through like a broken bond, which is fun coming off of the fact that she just made a bond with the vessel.
Yep. Yeah. So we don't get a whole lot of detail on like the parameters of magical like bargain making here. We see it happen, but like this was the vessels thing was a product of a broken bond. We don't get the details on that just yet. But I'm interested to learn more about that in the next book.
Me too.
So next we're back to Gray, and he is being led to the courtyard where Willow made the offering. And there, past a group of bystanders, he finds a body. The body is in the caress of the vines that Willow made an offering to when she first arrived. And this body is of a female witch. Unfortunately, her heart has been ripped out.
Oops.
So she can't be revived or brought back or anything like that. Willow arrives shortly afterwards, and as they stand there, one of the Covenants, George, says they need to close the school. But Susanna, of course, disagrees.
This was very reminiscent to me of the Chamber of Secrets.
Yeah, very Chamber of Secrets.
Yes. And Willow is not safe. We must protect her.
We must protect the chosen one.
The Chamber of Secrets has been opened. Enemies of the air, beware.
So the brown witch Bray is also there, and he kind of is muttering to himself that the vines wouldn't listen to him. And that's when Willow reveals to everybody that she made an offering to these vines, and that's why they wouldn't listen to Bray, because he wasn't giving them anything. Everybody's kind of horrified at this idea, and it immediately throws suspicion on Willow. But it's clear that whatever this thing is that has killed this witch was superhuman, because they haven't found the heart and it's not been surgically removed, I'll say.
Yeah, it's claws and blood and violence.
Yeah. One of the students that's kind of hanging around says that maybe Willow is killing off people who are in direct competition for her with Iben. And Willow like claps back and is like, I don't give a single fuck about who Iben was with before I got here.
Nope. She even says, like, you know, clearly you don't know, but it's more fun if you're willing to share.
Which makes Gray choke. So Gray is the one that's narrating this chapter, and he's just like, I almost fucking lost it.
I cannot handle what is happening with this woman right now.
So next, we have one of your favorite things, a dream sequence.
As soon as I turned the page and it was in all italics, I was like,
motherfucker.
You know what?
But it's a gothic horror. Like, you have to... A dream sequence is a crucial part of that.
I know. And honestly, I didn't mind this dream sequence at all. Because it served a purpose. It wasn't... It kind of blurred that line of, like, dream sequence versus vision.
Yeah.
And that is what makes it okay to me. And I've had that thought where, like, I will someday write a gothic horror, and, like, there's probably gonna be fucking dream sequences.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally get that.
Yeah.
I will say that this dream sequence was well done, because I could not read it in the middle of the night when I was feeding my child. So
it was very scary.
Yeah, very scary. So let's get into it. Willow is walking the halls of the school, and she hears a feminine voice calling out to her. And she eventually follows it to find a woman with long black hair. She recognizes this person from photographs of her aunt, Lorelei, and she can see that her aunt has something at her hip that she knows is probably the bag of bones. So Charlotte Hecate's bones. Lorelei, this vision, tells Willow that she doesn't have what Willow seeks. And then they hear a growl, and they feel the ground shake as something takes steps toward them. As it gets closer, Lorelei tells Willow to run and then to wake up. When Willow does wake up, she's gasping for breath and her back is on fire. She runs to the bathroom, and underneath her shirt, she sees 3 marks in a triangle shape cut into the skin of her back.
Ugh.
Yeah. The dream sequence was well done. It was very spoopy. But also, I like when dream sequences bleed into reality.
Yes, me too.
And not in the, what was it, Haunting Adeline way? No, was it that one?
No, it was fucking, wait. Was it, Chateau?
No, it was, the one about the Grim Reaper.
Oh, yeah, that was gross.
Yeah. This is gonna bother me. I'm gonna pull it up.
It's all I can think is Death Becomes Her. Have you ever seen that movie? That movie's great.
No, but I've recently been seeing like clips from it on TikTok and Instagram, and I need to watch it. I think I would like it.
You would like it. It's very it's really campy. It's good. It's really good.
Nice. That and Practical Magic are on my list for this spooky season.
I've never seen Practical Magic.
I haven't either.
We gotta watch it.
What the fuck is this? Death's Obsession.
Death's Obsession. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Those were stupid. I didn't like that. But I liked this when it was like, this thing is chasing you. And then when it gets you, like you wake up and you're in pain because something has happened to you in the real world. Exactly.
I liked that a lot. And it didn't make it so... It made it creepier because she also has the thought of like, I think she says... like blue witches and white witches or purple, whatever. Only some of them have visions. Like it shouldn't be a green witch or a black witch thing. Like this shouldn't be a thing that's happening to me.
Yes. Which is one of the reasons why she's incentivized to stay quiet.
Exactly.
So while she's in the bathroom kind of reeling from this experience, she's soon joined by Gray, who knows that she's bleeding. She tries to deflect, saying she's just on her period, and he says, how am I supposed to uphold my end of the bargain if you aren't honest with me? So eventually she does show him, but she's also naked, and there's some sexual tension there, obviously.
Obviously. Like, I think she's wearing shorts, but...
Yeah, but she's topless for sure.
Yeah, and she's kind of wearing, like, booty shorts was the vibe I got.
Yeah. So Willow tells him how she got the mark, what she saw in the dream, but she doesn't tell him that she recognized Lorelai as her aunt. She just says, she saw a woman.
And nothing about the bones.
No. He tells her that he's seen the mark before, and it's called the Devil's Eye. He implies that it was put there by the devil himself, and it's not something that vessels or witches can undo.
Spooky. And she's like, it's not like I have him on speed dial.
Right. So, rather than tending to her like a normal fucking person, Gray licks the blood off of her back.
In true vampire fashion.
And she's like, yeah, I should have seen that coming. Anyway, Gray asks whether she wants him, and she lies to him about it. Because though she still finds the idea of a vessel itself abhorrent, she is finding it harder and harder to ignore the fact that she's deeply attracted to Gray. Mm-hmm. Knowing that she lied to him, Gray pushes her against the wall and kisses her. As he kisses her, he pierces her lips so that he takes more of her blood. And the scene is hot, but there's a point in which he's like fondling her breast, and he says, do you think that any of the others will make you feel like this? And it just reminds me of that scene in Bridesmaids at the beginning where Kristen Wiig is having sex with John Hamm, and John Hamm is like touching her breast and like, do you like that? And she's like, yeah. Even though clearly it's doing nothing.
That is the vibe I got too, because like, I feel like you haven't earned the right to say that yet, because you haven't made me feel anything other than like basic lust yet.
Exactly.
Like you can ask me that after you make me come, but you can't just be like, oh yeah, do you like that?
Yeah, like give me mind-blowing sex, but don't gild the lily like that or prime the pump.
Right. And like, bro, we haven't really done anything, so calm down.
Right.
Calm down. Also, you know what? I think Ivan probably might make her feel like that.
So speaking of making her feel good, Gray edges Willow and tries to get her to tell him the truth about what she wants, and when she doesn't, he uses the fact that he freshly fed from her to compel her to not be satisfied by her own touch or by the touch of anyone else. So basically, she can only come with him. Which is such a dick move, and it works.
A dick move. It does work.
So it's worth noting here that even though she's wearing the necklace from her mother, because he's fed from her and they've exchanged blood, that works less and less. So the more they do this thing, the more access he has to use his compulsion on her. And so this unfortunate set of circumstances will persist until he decides to release her. And in her internal monologue, she's like, this bastard's not going to release me ever.
Ever. Nope. She also asks, like, if you can compel me, why don't you just force me to tell you the truth? And he's like, because this way is way more fun.
Right.
And I'm like, okay.
All right. So that is where we will end part 1. And don't worry, dear listeners, part 2 definitely makes good on all of the promises that part 1 has given us. All right. So that brings us to the end of part 1. Join us in 2 weeks for part 2, which will cover chapters 21 through 40. And we will also include our ratings at the end of that episode. So thank you for joining us on this journey. As always, let us know what you thought on the socials. You can find us at Spice Traders Pod on basically all of the platforms. And if you want more, consider joining as a patron, where we release episodes in our off weeks. And if you really like us, write us a review wherever you listen. Until next time, we'll see ya. Bye.
Bye.